Shadows is a 1959 film directed by John Cassavetes. The film centers around three very different siblings, Lelia, Benny, and Hugh. The scenes alternate between the three siblings who appear to live separate lives. However, their lives converge at the introduction of Tony, Lelia's boyfriend. Tony quickly grows distant when prejudice overcomes him at the realization that Lelia is African American. At this point, Tony decides to cut and run. Will the three siblings be able to move forward, and will Lelia recover from heartbreak? Director John Cassavetes got the original idea from Shadows from a script that focused on how Tony stole David's girlfriend, and therefore revealing the competitiveness among men in regards to women. The film was not produced purposely to focus on race, as the title for the film was gathered by stage crew members' drawing. Director John Cassavetes felt that this film was extremely personal and that most scenes were based on his own feelings and experiences. Benny reflected the wandering side of his personality. Lelia's romantic impulsiveness rivaled his own. Rupert and Hugh's views on business and friendship as separate entities mirrored his views on the issue. Ultimately, passing for something that you are not, as Lelia did, exemplified how Cassavetes felt about his own life. There are many fun facts about this movie. One of these is that all of the characters' real names were used in the film. Cassavetes once boasted and claimed that the film was improvised and shot in a little over 40 days. Yet, in actuality, it took 10 weeks and underwent meticulous scripting. Additionally, the production lasted 2 to 3 years, and the thrill and anticipation by society had been decimated by this point. This film was considered a pioneer in U.S. independent film production. John wasn't a fan of handheld cameras, but it was the most efficient way to film at the time and on the go, so he used the 16mm camera. The cameramanship was well known for showing unflattering close-ups of the actors, which annoyed them to no end. The major characters are Lelia, who is the film's center in terms of emotions. Hugh is significantly older than his other siblings, but he is down on his luck and he's a jazz singer. He also appears as a very dark-skinned African American. Ben is an angry young man who appears as a shade in between Lelia and Hugh. He is very protective over Lelia and is not afraid to express this. Finally, Tony, a white man whom Lelia falls in love with, has problems with her being of a different race, and these problems seem to form the rising action in the film. You will now hear from Carmen and Amanda on gender and race relations.
This shot of all three siblings raises the question, what does it mean to look black? Layla is the fairest and Hugh has the darkest complexion. Without knowing the context of the movie, many would likely assume that Hugh is the only African American on screen. The director's move to use actors that don't look like the widely assumed image of African Americans further addresses the issue of race relations at the time, and how a difference in skin color raised another set of issues entirely. When a person falls in love, it is not usually commonplace to forewarn a significant other of something such as racial identity. This is due to the fact that we often take the people we encounter in life at face value without questioning. Tony fell in love with Layla and her personality, assuming that she was a Caucasian woman. After discovering Layla's heritage, Tony becomes uncomfortable. He eventually returns to try and salvage his relationship with her. However, given the time period, to embark on an openly interracial relationship was grounds for much social persecution. The prospect of others finding out that he was dating a black woman would bring unwanted attention to him, which was part of his initial shock. The moment between Tony and Hugh is an example of how neither side wanted to be hurt, one emotionally and the other societally. Why do some people have the liberty of going through life without announcing themselves? Does an obligation of acknowledgement come into existence when a person's exterior does not traditionally coincide with their interior? As demonstrated throughout the movie by the siblings themselves, physical identifiers cannot always be used as signifiers of racial identity. With that being said, the concept of the movie Shadows relates back to the idea of how being viewed as an other, in this case African American, follows a person in a society that is not as accepting of them, whether they look the part or not.
Her brothers Hugh and Ben are presented as two opposing examples of masculinity. The two are often seen in conflict, usually because of their different treatment of women. Hugh is portrayed as more caring towards women, particularly Layla, but also more possessive. This fits in with the fact that he is seen as a more stable example of masculinity, being stronger and more physically stout than Benny, who is lankier and skinnier. The portrayal of Benny's masculinity is more ambivalent. Although he is physically slighter than Hugh, he engages in more traditionally masculine pursuits, such as chasing women and engaging in fights. Unlike Hugh, he has a large number of male friends. These differing examples of masculinity allow for a more nuanced interpretation of what it means to be male. As I will show, women are offered no such opportunity. The only female character who appears more than once in the film is Layla. The majority of women in the film are only romantic interests of the men, or burlesque performers. This leads to a one-dimensional view of women, especially when you consider that Layla's entire storyline is based solely upon what man she'll end up with. Her identity is completely tied up either in her relationships with her brothers or potential romantic partners. And we can see that Layla's relationship with her brothers is not a relationship of equals. Both Benny and Hugh consistently order her around or try to make decisions for her. Most interestingly, although Layla often tries to show a facade of a daring and vivacious girl, when it comes down to it, whenever she is showing that facade, however, it is usually either to impress her brothers or attract a man. When it really matters, such as when Tony is persuading her to have sex, when Hugh is demanding Tony leave, or when Davy is scolding her about Tony, Layla becomes completely silenced and then often slumps into the arms of whichever man is present. This dominance of men can be seen throughout the movie, not only in scenes between the characters, but in the staging and cinematography of the film. Portrayals of women are used as part of the scenery throughout the film. For example, Lila and her brother's apartment has a poster of a woman in it that is shown in several shots. Similarly, the cinematography often shoots the men in extreme close-ups, making them appear literally larger than life. In this scene, we can see how Layla is dwarfed by both her brothers. So in conclusion, the movie offers limited portrayals of women. In the only conversation between two women, the subject is a man. Women are often silent objects of men's desires, sexual or otherwise, and Layla herself often reverts to a passive participant in her own life. Men in the film, however, are afforded groups of friends, careers, and hobbies, and are portrayed as being larger and more powerful than their female counterparts. The film does not afford female characters the same luxuries.